Assalamu alaikum guys. In this video we will talk about authentication in Laravel, and in this video I will try to make you understand how does the authentication flows work in Laravel. So let's start. Our entry point here for authentication is auth.php file under config folder here, this file here. And if we noticed here, the first thing called defaults. So what is the default guard that will be used by Laravel? Let's skip it for now. And if we move here to authentication guards, here we have guards array, and it has only one guard called web, and it uses session because the supported driver here is session, and it works for provider users. So what does it mean? It means here for users provider, right, which we can see here on the providers array, this model, it may be employee, it may be customer, it may be anything, should use the web guard, right? So imagine we want to create multi-authentication in Laravel. So it needs another guard, for example, called employees, right? Here, I will disable copilot here. And as we can see, each new guard must contain the driver and provider. So I want to say here, the driver is session as defined here, and provider called employees. Now we want, or we must create this provider inside providers array. So we can say here under providers array, employees, this one, and it will use eloquent. You can set it to use eloquent or database, but for most of Laravel application, it's recommended to use eloquent most time. So I will say driver here, eloquent also, and I will create a new model here called make model employee, and I will create migrations also for it, right? And I will say model here will be employee class, right? And then it contains resetting passwords for each provider also, and password timeout by default after sending link or recreating the password. So let's focus now for authentication process. After that, by the way, I have installed a Laravel Breeze, and by default, if you notice here, it uses Auth middleware. And if we open kernel here to see this middleware, by the way, kernel here inside app folder directly, and inside the middleware alias array here in the end of the file, we will see this Auth middleware that's used to check if user authenticated or not. So let's see how does it work. If I open this class here, and as we can see, authenticate extends or inherit from this another one called authenticate, and if we open this here, we will see it's a normal middleware. And if we go to handle method that's used by normal middleware, we will see it implements also another authenticate method here. So if you go to this authenticate method inside the same class, it checks here for guards. So what's guards? It takes a parameter here. Now everything is connected. If we go again to auth, we will notice it refers to these guards. If no guard is defined, it will set as null, as we can see here, or it will create an array for guards here by default equal to a null first element. And if we go, for example, here auth, and we want to use parameter guard, which guard? Employee, right? Here, now it knows we must use employee guard inside auth here, and we will look at employees table or model. So I will remove it here for now, and I will back again to authenticate method, and then starts checking guards. So it checks here each guard, and then returns the method called should use. And if we open this should use method here inside its class. Let's open it. Inside Auth Manager class, as we can see, it says here if the guard name doesn't provide it or equal to null, then use or get the default driver here, this method. If we go to this get default driver method here, it says now go to config file and use auth defaults guard. And if we back again to auth here, we will see now we are in the config auth defaults guard, which uses web by default, right? So now if I go here to this auth manager again, and I will die and dump here, this one, I will say dd, and I don't, or I didn't find any guards here in my web, so I will try to access to profile. I didn't authenticate it yet. /profile here, visit, and by default it uses web. I will try to use employees guard that we created by default here, or employee, not employees. And if I try to visit it, let's first die and dump the guards here, tt guards, refresh again, and it redirects me to login page. If I go back here to the authenticate main one here, and if I say dd this guards, now we can see it uses employee guard, right? So I will remove it from here, and also I will remove it here. Now it uses different guards. Another important thing here, if we go to user model, it extends authenticatable class, which is responsible for authenticating or authenticate users. And if we open it, it implements multiple interfaces here and use also multiple traits, right? And now let's go to the same thing, and we will implement another guard authentication for employees. So if I go here to employees, right, employees model, and I will say here extends user auth here, because this is a same class. If we go into our user model, right, let's copy it to make it more meaningful, and I will use authenticatable, and I will go to employees table, and I will say table string name, table string email, and also quickly here string a password, and one last thing here, table remember me, boolean remember token, like in users table here. I will use it. And now let's migrate it here, arts and migrate, and it's migrated. If I open my database, I have employees table, and I will quickly create a user here, or a new employee, Ahmed for example, and email ahmed@mail.com, and password, I will create a new password quickly here. Actually it's available inside user factory. Yes, I will copy this password, which is password by the way here, and now we have a new user and email inside employees table. Now let's try to authenticate them. I will create a new one here, called a new controller called auth employee controller, or employee login controller, and let's quickly implement a login method here. And in this point I will say if here auth, and as you can see here it takes guard, so now I must say employee guard as we defined it inside auth.php file, this employee here, and Let's close first all of these tabs here. And then as we can see, attempt and email ahmed@mail.com. Password is password. And now I will say if not success, now I will say here the error. Let's create a route for them. Here, route middleware guest, it must be guest, and also guest middleware takes a guard parameter, employee. If we open here kernel again, and we go to guest middleware, let's open it quickly. As you can see, if user doesn't authenticate it according to the guard that it takes here, right, it will redirect to home page, right? Now let's continue our auth. If not, I will say success here. Now let's try it quickly. I will create middleware auth. Okay, actually let's make it get. Now login employee, and controller is employee login controller class, and middleware must be guest for employees. Now let's try to visit this route here. And as we can see, it success because whole password and email is correct. Let's, for example, add random password here, send request, and now it's error. If you stay here, my users table is empty. It doesn't care. It doesn't look at users table because I'm using employee guard. It looks at employees table. And now if we go to Laravel documentation here for authentication page, we may see generate session if authentication success, and I will say to the request, I will use helper here, request method, the same session regenerates. And after logging in, I want to go to another page. I will create it actually quickly here. Root get here employee, and function here middleware again auth for employee, right? And if we use function, and now if we dump here auth employee current authenticated employee here with dump, and I will create a name also here, name my profile, and I will say after authentication return to root this root here. Now let's back again, login / employee. As we can see now, I authenticated as this user. Let's go to our guest middleware, and I will say here dd guards to check login / employee. Now it's employee, and I will check is the current user authenticated or not. Let's actually say here dd12. Yes, it's authenticated. And if we go here, it returns me to dashboard. The dashboard also, if we go to web again here, dashboard page is protected by auth middleware for user this time, right? For the user, not for employee, but we can make a small change here, for example, because I will say if guard equal to employee, redirect me or return to root here. It's called, yes, my profile for employees. Now let's refresh again, and it redirects me to employee. So if we back here again to our controller or to our method here, I will say return username, right? Now refresh, and as we can see, I'm employee. So let's, for example, open it here in another tab for non-authenticated. If I check, now it converts me again or redirects me to a login page for user. What if, for example, I want it to redirect me to another page or to employees login screen? I will go to again here to my authenticate and inside redirect to method. And if you want to know which guard that we consume, it's very hard actually to guess inside this redirect method. But if we go here again to this authenticate middleware, there is a method called unauthenticate in case of authentication fails or session or guessed anyway. So what if we do dd here 1 2 3 for example, and I will try to visit in my profile here. As we can see, it works and it fires the redirect to method here, right? Using authentication exception here, because this redirect to method, as we can see, this one here has been implemented also inside the authenticate middleware. So let's do some changes here inside this authenticate method, and I will add another parameter to this redirect to method to accept guards, right? And the same thing here, guards also, to pass this guard to this method. And inside now authenticate middleware, which is inside our project, I will make it also accept this guards array, right? Now die and dump guards here. Now let's check, refresh again, and as we can see, we consume employee. Let's back to our web, and for example, I want to remove this guard here. By default, it's null, which means web middleware, right? But if you notice here, this authenticate middleware that extends from or for this authenticate, which is in our project, exists inside vendor, which means this changes is not applicable. So what I do now, I will create another middleware here, or to make middleware, and I will call it authentication. Here inside middleware authentication.php, it's inside our project actually. Here we have our authentication middleware, and what will I do? I will copy all of this content of that authenticate.php file inside vendor. Here I will copy it here and paste, and I will call it here authentication, and I will make this authenticate class, this one which exists also, authenticate here, extends from it, and now authentication, and now it works correctly. Now let's back and check again, refresh, and also I will fix my namespace here. This one, the previous one was here, so I will change my namespace also. And now let's try again, import it again with the new middleware or namespace, and because we are existing the same namespace, it doesn't matter to use here. Now let's refresh, and the same result. Let's use our employee middleware again, and here is the same result. Now let's back to our authenticate, and I will say here, for example, if auth or guards here, the first guard equal to employee or the current guard employee, I will copy it here, and instead of login, I will convert him to this controller here. So I will say dd will login, and set our web. Here I will copy this route. I will name it name login.employee. Now let's back and paste it here, refresh again, and now it will be logged in, right? Imagine maybe a login form, and if I remove dd, it will here to redirect me to our profile or to employee profile. So if I try to log in with employee again, it will redirect me automatically, right? So here, when we try to use another guards or multiple guards, take care of using the auth parameter here to set your guard while processing or while working on this guard session. Here's quickly a general tips about authentication in Laravel. If you found it useful, support me by clicking on like, share, and subscribe. See you in next videos.